Hello, hello.
Hello, may I change
The what?
the presenter mode here? How do you do that?
Okay,
Uh,
we're starting. Hello, hello. Yeah, yeah, hello. Well, let's continue. We'll link chats until lunchtime. Well, for the first timer, okay? You are in the CryptoNet chat. I guess you all know it, right? You have there where you can follow us, the Twitter hashtag on Twitter, CryptoRed, MineCrypt, Telegram. Again, quickly, thanks to sponsors, AWS, Oro Sandbox, AP+, Inetum Silver, GFT, Brawler. Well, for me, wait for it. Yeah. It's a pleasure for me, okay? Marc being here, Marc is very trollish, okay? So, but he's a sweet guy, okay? So, okay. I'm sure you don't like the chatter. Come on, thanks, Marc.
Thanks, Alfonso. Okay, before we start, I've been threatening the RouterCon people on Twitter for a few weeks now, to the people at the RouterCon. For those of you who don't know, I was carrying, without exaggerating, like, I don't know, I've been calling for papers here for years, and hey, I never got elected. I finally got elected. So if you want to give a talk here, try, and eventually you'll get it, okay? If the content, apparently, in an abstract can be interesting for the organization. So I encourage you to start, okay, to call for papers, also to give a talk here. So before we start, I also said I would do it. I'm a guy of my word. I wanted to comment, well, some issues that there have been on Twitter through Telegram channels. There you can see conversations between Roman. Alfonso is there too. Here, those who know us know that there is a conversation that, in addition, began in the one with a talk that Roman gave, I think, if I'm wrong, with Pablo Sanemeterio, about sandboxing issues and getting fingerprint here, the malware sandboxing. And in a group that we are a few, I said to him, Jesus Christ, Roman, you know that this was previously presented by a Catalan, don't you? Because you know that Roman is on the subject of Aragon, Catalonia, and so on. And I told him, well, you know that this was presented before by a Catalan, right? And from there, it started already in the one of this year on this topic. Every time I can, well, we are giving each other a little bit of give and take in public and in private, right? Both in public and in private, right? And yesterday, you know that the night in Madrid is dangerous? Yesterday, there was the speaker's dinner where they took us to the restaurant. Can you tell or not? Well, whatever. They took us to a restaurant. And it was funny to me. I was amused because that restaurant was the Alcer Català building, wasn't it? That made me laugh a lot. What a fucking coincidence, right? So the night in Madrid brought several things. And among them, well, I found that someone took this picture of me. So I can't say who did it, okay? I can't say who did it, but that's how it was, right? So if anyone wants to take a picture and send it to Roman on Twitter, I'm sure he'll find it funny. So I'll leave you, nothing, about 20 seconds to take a picture. Whoever wants to, tag Pato and tag me, just to give a little bit of a hard time to Roman, which I always like, okay? Okay? I'm here to talk about ransomware negotiations. You know, this is the order of the day. He's going to make a lot of money. Not as much as in the damn smart contacts and so on, which I'm thinking of changing sector, okay? But they also make a lot of money on the equivalent side. At least in the blockchain part and so on, the money earned is lawful with a bug bounty, okay? I wanted to start with breaking news. You know, recently, if you've read it, the Hive people were, let's say, arrested, okay? The domain was, let's say, seized by an international operation led by Europol. This is all good news for the industry, as yet another ransomware group, well, is arrested. And in addition, very recently, in February, there was also an operation with Europol, and in addition, other countries. where 2 members of the Doppelpaymer group were also arrested, okay? That is to say, they are a little bit on the hunt for this type of profiles. And, well, we always support this type of international operations because they are really hurting the industry. And, well, whenever there is an operation of this type, it means that there are fewer people doing evil, which is always a good thing. Then, obviously, you have been able to see, if you are not in a cave, you will have been able to see the issue of the hospital clinic in Barcelona, in which, well, there has been a group called Ransomware doing evil, which well, apparently has managed to breach the hospital and remove data and encrypt data as well, right? As a result of the statements made by the censorship agency of Catalonia, right? So from here, which is also a forum of experts, to give all the support, both to Mossos de Esquadra, as well as to the censorship agency of Catalonia, and also, obviously, to the human and technical staff of the hospital clinic, which these days, well, must not be having a good time, because you can imagine a little bit the attack on hospitals, the impact it has, right? When we talk about the ransomware as a service industry, we are looking at an industry that moves a lot of money, right? People sometimes wonder, how much money does this move? Well, there's a report from the US FinCEN in which it gives data about transactions that they have controlled. That is only what is known, obviously, which is 5.2 trillion transactions in BTC. We are talking about a lot of money. That's why when I have a conversation with a journalist and he asks me, hey, but the attacks are sophisticated, they are advanced and offensive equipment, hey, but they are moving a lot of money. If they can pay whoever they want to do whatever they want, we are talking about a lot of money. They move a lot of money. And I insist, we are only talking about what is known. We are not talking about operations in which a ransom is paid and nobody knows why you are not in a happy block or whatever, because you have been attacked. If we do a little bit of top 5 families, we see the Lockbit people, who are, for me now, the #1 Black Cat, Blackbuster, Cuba ransomware, and also the now defunct Hive ransomware was in the top 5. In terms of architectures that they attack, well, we can see, obviously, Windows as the main system, although it is also very fashionable to give a lot of sidewalk to SSX servers, because it encrypts the virtual machine, it encrypts the data center, and the DevOps team has to run to be able to rescue the systems. So I also encourage the DevOps teams to be able to save the environments. They are using custom tools to do data exfiltration, but also traditional tools like rclone, FileZilla, and so on to get the data out. And as for the mode of exploitation, they are using both old CVs. That's why I say, please patch, please patch. Don't leave vulnerabilities in the public park for months. Please patch, please, okay? It's important. They're also hiring what's called initial access brokers, which are very specialized hacking groups that are going to take it upon themselves to patch you, to get remote access to your infrastructure, and sell it to them, so that 6 months later, a year later, 3 years later, somebody decides to give you the stick with a ransomware attack, okay? That happens today as well. How does it work? Well, on the side of my right, we have the ransomware operators, which would be, well, people who go to the office, or I don't know if they have jobs, but their 8x5, 9x6 job is just to look for victims. The 8x5, 9x6 job is just to look for victims. How do they do this? They go to Shodan and they look at, hey, tell me all the companies that are in Madrid, or that are in Italy, or that are wherever, that have, for example, this version of Tomcat running, that I know there's an RCE. It's as simple as that. Then, if I get a victim that may be interesting, I look also at the billing that it may have, that there are some platforms. In Spain, we have the famous Informa, which you can look at the turnover that an organization may have. Roughly speaking, but also outside, there are other international platforms that you enter, and you know if this company has a round of funding, if not, if it receives money, news, and so on. You look for some information about the company, and if it is, let's say, interesting, well, it can be a good target. They manage to compromise the company, distribute the malware, lateral movement, reach the active director, encrypt the whole organization, and force the company with a system. Now we are already talking about triple extortion. First it was a ransom note and just a mail edition. Now we have a live chat where we can talk to the attacker, and now directly, as they have the structure of the company, they talk to the CFO and tell him, you are the one who handles the money, approve the voucher to pay this. It is already directly individual extortion to the people who control the money. So how does it work? Of course, if you want to scale the business, you need many soldiers. So basically what ransomware operators do is to use what are called affiliates. Affiliates are just cyber criminals who are in another malware industry doing, I don't know, traffic for malicious traffic. They have malware as a service platforms for stealer issues. They operate in malicious ad networks, exploit kits, a little bit of what everyone looks good at. They do that, and basically what they do is they get as many victims infected as possible. And they get a percentage for the payment. I'm going to show you a little bit about how the panels work before going into the negotiation part, where you will see a little bit about how this is set up. In other words, the ransomware developers, those who control this type of malware, are developers. What does this mean? That they can do whatever they want to themselves, and they tend to automate as much as they can to make the affiliates as autonomous as possible. So this is an example of the Lockbit dashboard, the private Lockbit dashboard, where you can see that this is where a new company that's been affected is going to be posted. And you can see, hey, what's the company site? You can even put the logo, the deadline, everything that you see in a happy block. You can customize it with a panel. And if you want to compile your own ransomware, well, there you go. You can choose the compilation date, a comment, if you want it to have a UAC bypass, if you want it to run in silent mode, change the icon, have wake on land. We come to all the features, all the capabilities that the Lockbit group offers to its affiliates are in a click panel for you to compile the ransomware. And the same with the stealer. That is, if you want to be able to steal information, Lockbit is one of those groups that has its own stealer. Instead of using tools like FileZilla and such, they offer a utility as an added value to their business model for their affiliates to steal data. Think ransomware groups need to be very attractive because there are a lot of ransomware groups and affiliates. The pie is a finite pie. That means that if I have most affiliates working for me, they are not working for Black Cat. They sometimes work for several groups. But if they only work for me, it means I get a big piece of the pie. So they need to be very attractive in terms of functionalities and that their piece of malware works very well. Here's an example with the victims covered. Here you see different use cases. You can see, for example, companies that already have a price set. This means that the negotiation has already started, and friends, it is not going to abort. We have companies that don't yet have the dough they are going to ask for published. It means they are still in negotiations. They are not angry yet. And we have people who have decided within their negotiation, well, not to pay, which is what has to be done, and they have published the data. We have like 3 totally different use cases. Ransomware negotiations. Well, negotiating, my friends, is an art. I mean, we have to think of this as a chess game. And above all, in the event that we want to relegate someone or a company to negotiate for us, we have to stop doing their job for them. Yesterday at the speaker's dinner, I was talking with Antonio, with Abraham, who are dedicated to the subject of incident response. Incident response, the issue of the problem of negotiations, right? In which you need, well, obviously to be allowed to do your job, right? So obviously, it's a very complex process, okay? It is a chess game that is going to last for a while, and we need to do things to gain time in some cases, and also to be able to see a little bit, to evaluate the incident, to see where it is going. So when we talk about a negotiation workflow, we would have these 4 buckets very well identified, right? The first one would be the organization. The victim needs to identify the data bridge and contact the ransomware operator. There are a lot of people who are afraid to open the chat portal and say, geez, if I open it, do they know I'm compromised? No, they already know. There's 0 that you open the browser for everything and it blows up in your face. Relax. Open it and see if you can negotiate something. Because I have come across organizations that had 2 different affiliates committed to them. Then they both asked for the same, for example, small prices. They asked for 10 and 10 to get your files back. Talk to them, negotiate, maybe you can get a 2-for-1 deal. Or they have affected you with the Windows version and with the Linux version. And you say, hey man, behave yourself, you know, just pay me one. And this sometimes happens. There are a few times that they have succeeded, okay? So always open the communication channel, try to gather intelligence about what's going on, try to explain the situation, and so on. And sometimes some groups, I am not going to say here, I am not going to defend them because it seems to me that they would say that they are nice, but they want you to open a chat to talk to them, because obviously if not, no response is a bad response. So it is important to open the communication channel, right? Then it is also important that you validate a little bit the will of the one behind the ransomware group, right? I mean, the operator can pass you evidence of, for example, data to decrypt. And there are people here who have been very clever and who, for example, had maybe, imagine a file that had passwords in it. Everybody keeps passwords in files, right? Or SSH passwords or something like that. And maybe you didn't have a backup and you need it. So instead, since you are going to ask for a proof to say and so on, well, hey, ask for the file you need and ask them to give it to you. That is to say, before asking for a random file, like the sample image that comes with Windows, ask for something that might be of interest to you and that maybe the company needs that file to be able to work, okay? Then the negotiation. The victim would negotiate for the data ransom. It's important that we do this process with assistance, okay? Very important, because what happens? Because sometimes the decryptor brings another encryptor. Then you decrypt the data, and after the data, you zoom in and everything is encrypted with another new key, and you have to do it again. You have to go through the cache register again. It doesn't normally happen with the major groups because obviously they make their living from, well, part of what they make is from ransomware, plus from other alliances. So it's important that we do this recovery part with assistance. If we don't have cyber equipment in place and so on, then it's good to contract with a partner or a freelancer or whatever you want to be able to do this ransomware part, okay? Because it could be that you get, as far as you can, you get the money for the ransomware, and then you find out that it was useless, okay? And it is also important, at the moment, you are going to make the payment if in the end the company decides to pay. Although remember that in Spain, it is illegal. It is important to detect the point of entry, because if not, what will happen? Because after 6 months, lock for shell, you enter inside and, well, again, the issue, okay? It has happened that an organization has paid, and 6 months later, they have the same problem again, and curiously, not with that group, but with another one. It could also be that the affiliates work for several at the same time, and they know the data, right? So it is important, when it comes to paying, to know if it is going to be done, when it is the moment. And before doing so, try to make sure that the entry point is identified. There are negotiators who ask the ransomware group how they got in, and there are groups that tell, well, look, I blew up the Drupal you had there, and either I blew up Tomcat, or you had something left running here, and they explain it to you, huh? Because they say they're actually looking out for your security. And then there's the issue of the agreement. I mean, this is a whistleblower. There is some money, they put in some money that they get out of it this way. This, I think, can be worth this money, okay? Obviously, if you are a critical sector of the city, well, and they know it, obviously, because they are not stupid, well, you know that they are going to ask for a lot of money. If you are a small company that markets, that has a small team of book hunters for crypto, well, you know that you are also going to pay a lot of money, okay? So it's important to know how to negotiate and a little bit to reach an agreement on the payment. And always, well, obviously, try to stretch as much as possible to get as little money as possible. You should know that there are companies that specialize in negotiation. That is to say, there are companies that you give them your case, and they take care of negotiating it for you. Because there are groups that, in their rules, tell you that if they catch you, that you are not the one negotiating, and it is a negotiating company, they directly break a negotiation agreement and publish the data. That is why it is so important to open the communication channel and see which group it is. And if I don't know, I Google or ask the CryptoRed people on Twitter, who I'm sure know. But it's important to know the modus operandi of that group, to have a little bit of intelligence about it, to see what the use case they are going to do is like. Because that's going to set the negotiation strategy until we finalize the incident. Question: are the negotiations being done by the ransomware group itself? Well, it has been observed for some of the groups that actually that negotiation scheme is kind of separate. That is to say, there is a group that operates the ransomware. That is to say, the infrastructure, the builders, the dealers, all of them do it. But the negotiation part is relegated to a call center. That is to say, they have a group of people who are simply in contact with the group, but who are in charge of negotiating this for them. And why do we realize that? Because sometimes you ask them, hey, would it be possible to do a 2-for-1 that I have been attacked by 2 different affiliates? And they tell you, well, I don't know, I have to ask. They can't make the decision. And they ask, and after a day or 2, they tell you, okay, they said yes, go ahead or not. They told me no, that you know you have a lot of money and that you don't. And this is also interesting and plays in our favor because we can even force the operator to reach an agreement with us in order to favor the negotiation scheme. And we see this a lot. The groups that normally have the negotiating team immersed in their structure are usually much tougher, as far as I have been able to see, than those that relegate this negotiation to a call center which does the work for them. Here are 2 examples. One would be the old method still used by some ransomware groups, which is emailing. You get an address on Proton Mail or Tutanota, you send the email, and the report goes that way. Disadvantages of this, the intelligence industry, because sometimes we lack details on how these groups operate, how they think, what are the steps they take, and so on. We have a hard time getting TTPs out. And then there's the live chats part, which, well, yes, you need the identifiers, but in the end, this, well, it ends up coming out because the ransom note gets leaked. So you can learn a little bit about the modus operandi of the group, okay? In fact, I don't remember what group it was for. I think it was Rebil, that they were looking for, that the chats were indexed in Google, because they use these paywalls, these domains, which is actually a domain that ends in .com or whatever, and it's a proxy for the Tor network, and they do that to make it a little bit easier to access that. And the chats were indexed in Google, and you could kind of learn how that worked. Then we also have to understand that if we have the bad luck that we get a ransomware family, where when they infect you, you can't contract with them, because the only goal was to destroy, well, sorry, you were unlucky. There are ransomware families that have been discovered that certain operations at a geopolitical level that are happening, well, they decide to make a ransomware sample that they throw at an organization with the sole purpose of deleting, destroying, corrupting the data, and there is no way to recover it because they also delete shadow copies and so on as they do a normal ransomware, but there is no ransom note. I mean, you can't contract with anybody because there's nothing to contact, or the page they give you is bullshit, okay? There's nothing there. And that's the case, for example, with what we published about Elections Go Ransom that was attacking on Ukraine. Then I'm going to bring you about 3 very quick little cases, okay? The first one is a negotiation chat about ContiLocker. And here we have, well, a chat where the victim and the attacker, well, they're talking, right? So he asks, hey, I need help decrypting the data, right? And he says, hey, well, you enter it, right? We are ContiLocker. I don't know what. Tell me who you are. I don't know how much. Hey, well, this is ours. We are a public school. I don't know what. And they start discussing a little bit, don't they? And then here it says, hey, we are ready to negotiate. And if you pay, well, this amount of money in 24 hours, we have the decryption, right? This is an example of real negotiations that have taken place throughout history, for example, with ContiLocker. Then we have this other case, okay? This is the Revit chat, where it was explained that the chats were indexed. And here we have a little bit of the demands that the victim was making, okay? And the reply that the ransomware operator makes, right? And you have to be very careful with this. If the operator detects that when he asks you for something, you don't have the ability to make a decision, you're going to be winning the battle. That is to say, before starting to play this game, you have to try to know a little bit the frameworks in which you are going to be able to move, and obviously be intelligent in this. That is why there are companies that are dedicated to this, and know a little bit in which scales you can move. Because if they see that when you ask for something, when they ask you for something, you take days to answer, I don't know what, the conversation does not flow, okay? It is important to be very clear about this, because this is what is going to determine whether or not you can go to a meaningful negotiation, okay? In this case, look at what he says. Hey, well, you're a competent negotiator, okay? Okay? And this is a case I was telling you about, in which the company is negotiating for a universal decryptor for the whole company, because they are attacking the whole park, both Windows and Linux. And, well, they negotiate with an operator, and the operator says, hey, yes, I will give you a universal decryptor, because the money you are going to pay, well, I think it is enough, okay? And then we have the third party in Discord, okay? Who is a guy who directly, well, I am not going to say it on tape, but you read it, right? The turkey doesn't care. He doesn't care. He decides not to negotiate. What the support guy is saying is that, hey, you talked to Coverware. So the guy says, hey, you hacked me. Don't ask me for things, right? And then basically, the victim basically tells him to go fuck himself, that he doesn't care if they publish everything, right? Obviously, this is not what I would advise you to do in a negotiation process. It's important to stay calm. That's why it's very important to have people who are dedicated to negotiating and who know what's what. There are a lot of companies also in Spain, obviously with experience in negotiating this type of agreements, thinking that in the negotiation time, you can gain a lot of time for the recovery and, above all, for the strategy on how to negotiate. That is to say, how much money you are going to ask for, what you are interested in recovering. Maybe you are not interested in recovering everything. Maybe you don't care if they publish something because you don't care, you know? It is also important to know how to make an assessment of what they have taken. They are not going to tell you, but with an IR team, in an insider response team in your company, they can help you to know what they have taken. Knowing what they've taken away, with that we're going to make a value judgment on how much value that has to us. I'm taking out of the equation reputational impact, media exposure. I'm simply taking that out. How much is what they have taken? If they didn't take anything of value, then maybe the negotiation goes to another port, okay? That is why I always say, open the channel, talk to them, make an assessment of what they have taken, and based on that, decide a little bit what the negotiation strategy is. Not saying anything is a bad answer. Conclusions? I'm already there with the iPad there, it's there, the iPad's there, okay? Be aware of what the ransomware group's TTPs are. Know the ransomware group. If we have a group that doesn't care if you talk to a negotiating firm, well, you can do that. If not, I'm not saying don't do it, but hide it, i.e., don't let, because this is what I've come across. Hi, I'm from such a negotiation firm. I'm here to take care of this case. Screwed up. Yeah, because they break negotiation and publish everything, okay? And you can't do anything about it, okay? Because they don't care, there's like no way around that, okay? Try to come to an agreement. In the end, it is like a negotiation process. Like when you are going to try to improve your salary condition in a company, try to negotiate, okay? With them, see what agreement you can reach. Also, see how you can make this tug of war with them, find out how much they are willing to lower the price, how much they are willing to give. There are times that I have managed to recover even between sales and 30 files from a company, okay? That is, negotiate with the operator, okay? They too are not artificial intelligences, okay? There is no GPT chat behind it, there are people. So you can negotiate with them, okay? It's important to be able to get as much as possible out of that negotiation, okay? Even if you end up paying in the end, it's important to analyze your attack surface to see what the entry point is. If we don't do that, another group or the same group will come back in after a few months. And it's important to run what's called in-tabletop exercise, which is basically to be able to simulate what affiliates are doing to compromise your company. When it comes to preventing a ransomware attack, and that's it.
Questions? Questions? Mark, Sandra, come on over. Let's get ahead of time. Questions for Mark?
Why are people waiting there? How? I don't know.
You can come in, huh? I know you're polite, but it's okay. Any questions for Mark?
Yes, there were questions.
Well,
thank you
you very much for the talk. It's very interesting. I wanted to ask you about the hospital clinic. What would you recommend?
To the clinician, or how to handle an incident like the clinic?
In the talk
yes.
You say never negotiate with criminals, but you have told us some tips on how to negotiate with them. In the case of the hospital clinic, what would you recommend?
Well, the first thing I would recommend is to know, because since very little has been published, to know what the terms of negotiation are. That is, obviously, in the position I am in, what I have to say to everybody is, let's not keep feeding this ecosystem, because in the end, they are making a lot of money. But I can also understand, and it is a debate that as an industry is going on, what do we do with those companies with a productive fabric in which, well, they have their accounting system stopped. They only depend on that and they cannot produce, and the payment of the ransom would allow them to continue paying payroll and continue with the business. What would we have to do? Let them die or pay? Sure, obviously, paying more encourages them to do that, but not paying means throwing a workforce out on the street because you can't operate, right? And yes, we could enter into the debate of, well, should we have done security scans or should we have had an IR team? Yes, we all know a little bit what should be done. But obviously, for that company that is screwed up at that moment, it is complicated to be able to give it a solution other than continue operating, right? So, in the case of the clinic, well, obviously, to evaluate what they have taken, if they have taken academic studies on the new cure for cancer, it will have almost no importance for anyone except for the researchers who may publish earlier. If pathologies of people or people who have an ATS or people who are sick with cancer, medical data and so on of citizens have been taken, well, obviously we are talking about a different matter, right? The assessment has not been released yet. We do not know what they have taken, and I am not aware of what has been quantified. So I leave it a bit to the discretion of the agency and the Mossos de Esquadra to assess it, right? That's what I can tell you.
And one last question. Ransom House, you think they know it's a hospital and they're aware that they've blocked a hospital and they don't care?
It's important, and I've been saying it in many interviews to sanitize this issue. That is to say, we are talking about an industry that moves a lot of money. They know perfectly well that it is a hospital, unlike Lockbit or Black Cat, which have in their terms of use for affiliates, that you cannot attack hospitals. Ransom House can attack any type of victim. In fact, it's not the first hospital they attack, and it won't be the last. They know perfectly well that it is a hospital. They know perfectly well that people are going to go for radios, chemo, etc., but they just don't give a fuck. They don't care. They don't give a fuck. If they stop a hospital, the better. It means they will have more pressure to pay.
Thank you very much. One last one real quick, so as not to take up time. Over there.
There's a
down
question
here.
up there.
I'm sorry, it's for convenience, okay? I'm going downstairs.
Hello, Mark. I'm sorry I have to ask you. It's okay?
It's okay. I'll get over it.
It's nothing. I wanted to ask you something that you didn't tell, which is the slide after that. They are attacking in a particular way, but I guess you guys have seen the trends. What do we expect in the future? Especially, you know, I'm interested in the public administration part of it. We're going to see that thing of, would you recommend this ransomware to a friend, popcorn type thing?
What we expect to see, which we actually put out some predictions that talked about that, is they'll probably discontinue payment in BTC and go to other cryptocurrencies, like, for example, Monero, because obviously you can track payments in BTC and so on. That would be, the payment mode will be changed for sure. And another thing that we're going to see for sure, is that they're not going to decrypt the data anymore. They don't care. They know that by exploiting data with GDPR, LOPD, blah, 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 in the end, the administration, well, they put these penalties to fine the companies for not doing, well, for not taking care of the data and so on of the users. Europe is very much into data privacy and everything, data protection and so on. So they'll pull the data and they'll just say, hey, I have your data, pay, and that's it. But they're not going to decrypt the data because they don't care anymore. They don't give a damn. Ransom House, in fact, is a group that doesn't have ransomware as such. They just make alliances with other groups. They don't have a ransom group. They don't have a ransomware group. They are unfiltered. They are focused on unfiltering and doing hacking issues. And that's how they get the data that they have.
Take your pick, Mark. One or two? Two, but it's because he's a friend. How are you going to put the prize? Well, thank you, Mark. A round of applause. And Maris, Sandra,